This is one of my favorite parts of the show because we're going to get to our top 25. Now, we're going to do it a little bit differently than we did it last week because last week we basically took our personal top 25s, compiled it into a list. I'll be honest, I put it into ChatGPT and let it average the whole thing out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the top 25. So I will start the honors and go first. So we'll go from 1 to 25 and kind of explain why we had where these teams where we had them. So I've got Ohio State number 1. Obviously, there's no question about it. Defending national champions, the big win against Texas a couple weeks ago, as Arthur pointed out. Julian saying a good game last week, a good opportunity to kind of continue to get that offense in rhythm. Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate and company against the Ohio Bobcats. Penn State number 2. Again, I went back and forth on Penn State and LSU at number 2. The fact of the matter is LSU didn't look so good last week against Louisiana Tech. I decided to put Penn State, even though they themselves didn't look so great in the first half against FIU. LSU, one of the most talented teams in the SEC, put them at number 3. I have Texas 4th. Again, I think there was a little too much of an overreaction again to the Arch Manning struggles against Ohio State in the sense that, again, unless you're someone who, Paul Finebaum, who thought he was the second coming of Tim Tebow, you were like, horseshoe, not terribly accurate, did not play well whatsoever. But again, kind of found his rhythm. It is San Jose State. They got a game against UTEP today. Again, very soft 3-game schedule after the Ohio State game for Arch to kind of get his rhythm. Oregon's playing great football. I've got them at number 5. Georgia didn't look so good offensively at number 6. I believe they're 128th in the country in yards per attempt. So that's going to be interesting to see. They've had one play over 30 yards this season. So we'll see how Georgia responds against Tennessee. Miami at number 7. Again, dominant win last week. Good win to go against Notre Dame in week 1. Big game for them against USF. Notre Dame, I've got at number 8. This is their second opportunity to kind of make a statement. I said coming into the season, if you can split with Miami and with Texas A&M, Notre Dame's got a clear path to the college football playoff to go 11-1 down the stretch. Marcus Freeman's a great coach. We know this. I got South Carolina number 9. Again, Beamer's done a great job there. I am as big of a Lenore Sellers fan as there is. I freaking love the kid's upside, and I think they've done a good job replacing some of those starters on the defensive side of the ball that they lost in the draft. Illinois at number 10, I got to admit, I had them as a playoff team in large part because their schedule's kind of easy. The fact of the matter is, listen, Duke is not a pushover necessarily. I know they're an ACC school, but they're a 2.5-point favorite on the road, and they go into Duke and absolutely hammer the Blue Devils. So a good win there for Illinois. I've got them at number 10. In the next 10 here, I've got Oklahoma number 11. Considered putting them in over Illinois, but again, I think Illinois' body of work going back to last season would put them above Oklahoma. But a good win for the Sooners against Michigan. John Mateer, we talked about earlier, looked really good. I'm not going to lie to you. I almost put Clemson a few spots below where I had them. I decided just out of respect to have them at number 12 based on where they started the season. Great defense. Kate Klubnik, we'll see if he can kind of come into his own and live up to the hype that we thought he'd be before the season. Florida State at number 13. I don't know what you can say. They scored 70-plus last week, again, albeit against a lesser opponent. My Tennessee Vols have got at number 14. Obviously, this is a game today, which we'll predict at the end of the show against Georgia, that will really kind of determine the outcome of Tennessee's season. Not just in the sense of, obviously, you want to win the game, but if you can play the Dogs close at home at Neyland Stadium with a schedule that includes Bama, Oklahoma, Florida, this is an opportunity to kind of say, hey, we are one of the most respected teams in the SEC, and we'll see how the Vols can respond. Iowa State, listen, I'm a fan of Rocco Beck. I like the kid's experience, his moxie. I've got Iowa State at number 15. A&M at 16. Big that Marcel Reed is going to play tonight against Notre Dame. I like what he brings to the table in terms of being a dual-threat quarterback. Ole Miss, Ole Miss did not cover for me last week for the cover crew. Kentucky got the classic backdoor cover against the Rebels. That was rough to watch, but Ole Miss is still well coached. Good quarterback play. Bama at number 18. Tim brought it up earlier in the show, but the fact of the matter is, very disappointing loss to Florida State. Came out, responded in a big way. I've got them at number 18. Utah's looked amazing through the first few weeks. I've got them at 19. Michigan, I don't want to panic too much in the Wolverines because I still love their talent defensively. Bryce Underwood, as we talked about, has to kind of come into his own from a maturation standpoint. I don't love what they have at wide receiver. Sherrone Moore's about to serve his 2-game suspension, but Michigan should be fine in that stretch. And finally, the last 5. I've got USF at number 21. I don't want to overreact too much to the fact that, again, they've beaten 2 ranked teams, Boise State and Florida. Obviously, the game against Miami is going to really kind of determine the outcome of their season from that standpoint. But obviously, my man Alex Golish has done a great job coaching that squad. Texas Tech's look good at number 22. Auburn, listen, I think a big reason Auburn got into the top 25 is not just because they've looked impressive in their first 2 games, but a road win against Baylor, a Baylor team who went on the road to SMU and got the W. Jackson Arnold's looked good. We know Hugh Freeze is a good coach. Missouri at number 24. The loss at quarterback does concern me for the Tigers. And Arizona State, I've still got them in the top 25 just because I have a ton of respect for Kenny Dillingham. The loss to Mississippi State, I said last week that had upset alert potentially written all over it, but I still got Arizona State in the top 25. They can absolutely still win the Big 12 and get into the college football playoffs. So that is my top 25. I'll go to you, Arthur, now. Next on this, I'll go and put your top 25 up here if I can find it. Here we go. Why did you rank these teams where you rank them?
So you look at the first three. The first three took care of business, right? Ohio State knew exactly what they were going to do against Grambling. They looked very good early on. Again, Julius playing insane in that game, to say the least. Penn State over FIU. I expected them to cover. They did not. That really disappointed me. The fact that it was 10-zip at halftime, I didn't like. I was thoroughly disappointed in that first half performance, but they came out and did what they needed to do in the second half and scored 24 unanswered points. LSU, I like the fact how I didn't like the win, right, against Louisiana Tech, the fact that you only win by 16 points in your host stadium, but nevertheless, you did get the job done. And then you go on to Oregon. I had them jump up because, again, as you'll see throughout this entire list, audience, I like blowouts against people that you're supposed to blow out, and I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. And Oregon did what they exactly needed to do against Oklahoma State. They beat them by 66 points. And then you go into Miami, beat Bethune by 42. And then you go into Georgia. Again, you talked about it, Bryson. Georgia hasn't really looked the same. And I believe that's just because a whole lot of in and outs that they've had, right? You've got Carson Beck leaving. You got Ladd McConkey coming out of there. You've got Brock Bowers coming out of there. You got a whole lot of guys that were dominant as a Bulldog, either going to the NFL or transferring out like Carson Beck did going to Miami, and they just do not look the same. It's weird, right, from this team that just has looked so dominant the last few years. It was like, dang, okay, well, I mean, it still is Georgia football, and we're going to give them that respect, but it's just like, dang, I would have expected a little bit more from them, especially on both sides of the ball, but that offense has just been so dominant. Texas, I like the bounce back game that Arch Manning had, but it is San Jose State, so I'm not going to give him too much on that, but I expect him to be able to keep himself growing and maturing as the season goes on. Illinois took care of business against Duke. I like what they did, beating them by 26 points on the road. It wasn't a pushover game, but then Illinois just showed why they were the better team in the end. Notre Dame, I'm going to keep them where they are at number 9. Didn't play last week, and again, they had that loss week 1. It was an upset, so I'm gonna keep them at number 9. Florida State, coming out and doing what they did against East Texas A&M, beating them by 74 points. Again, man, I'm going with the blowouts. I'm going with the dominant team, showing why they're dominant in their games that they're supposed to show it. So that's FSU at number 10, and then South Carolina at number 11. Beating SC State by 28 points. Again, I love these in-state rivalries, these in-state competitions. They always make for fun ones that you can have over your opponent. Clemson, I got them by 11 at number 12, only beating Troy by 11. We talked about it earlier, going down 16-3 at halftime, but being able to find that spark in the second half to come out and play the way that they did. Again, down some starters, but that's not an excuse to why you're losing 16-3 at home against Troy. You should have been beating them off rip. But kudos to them for still getting the win. Number 13, Oklahoma. What a win against the Michigan Wolverines. I'm happy for them. Again, this is Sooner. This is arguably one of the best rivalries against Texas in college football. I love the way that they came out and played. I love the fact that they made Bryce Underwood not be composed. I love how they made him frustrated, and I love how Mateer, their quarterback, just came out and just balled out for them in this game. Tennessee, hey, listen, man, your Vols are doing very well. I got to give you credit for that, Bryson. Beating ETSU by 55 points. I know you had ETSU coming out on top because that is your school.
Hey, not sure. I said I was pulling for him, Arthur.
Well, anyways, but nevertheless, Tennessee coming out and doing what they needed to do against ETSU. Iowa State at number 15. Again, another team that took care of business against Iowa, but we all knew Again, these in-state competitions are going to be tough. And Iowa, the Hawkeyes, possibly, arguably tight end you, are not a slouch team. They're always going to be tough. They're always going to play hard-nosed. That's just been the mantra of their team for years, and it showed against Iowa State. Iowa State only beating the Hawkeyes by 3. They got the job done. It wasn't easy. You had to get it out the mud, and that's exactly what Iowa State did. Texas A&M beating Utah State by 22 points. I like what they did at home. Again, just being able to be dominant against the teams you're supposed to be dominant against, right? I don't like these close games. I don't. Again, Clemson, I don't like the close game. You should have been dominant from the very beginning. USF with that amazing upset win over the Florida Gators. I got them at number 17. Discipline, again, discipline for the Florida Gators. Coach Billy Napier possibly on the hot seat again, once again, with Gators fans, because they do not accept mediocrity, as Tim has spoken on. Ole Miss beating Kentucky by 7 points. It was on the road. This was going to be a very good game, right? Especially after what happened last season. But Ole Miss was able to get the job done on the road against Kentucky, winning by 7. Utah spanking Kyle Poly by 54 points at home. Again, expected. I love the dominant performances. This is exactly what you're supposed to do. And Alabama beating UL Monroe by 73 points. A dominant win. And again, the board, can you keep this going throughout the season with the Crimson Tide? Texas Tech beating Kent State by 48 points. Dominant win at home. IU, listen, man, I love what IU has done the last 2 years, right? It's going to be another interesting season with them. I think it's going to be dogfights throughout it, but I believe they'll be able to come on top with a lot of them. Auburn, got to be happy with how they've been playing the last few weeks. Michigan, again, growth. Bryce Underwood, freshman. These are growing pains. You're going to have that throughout this freshman year. You're going to be playing against teams that are dominant. You're going to be playing against teams that are going to make you frustrated and show your youth, right? You're going to have to find ways to combat that, though. And the way you combat that is playing against those teams, playing and getting more reps, being able to have the team come around you and really support you. Again, Tim talked about it, how this may be seen as a bad thing. And I completely understand that, but I see this as a good thing where they say, young fella, listen, we got you, right? We want to win too. We are passionate as well, but there is a way that you show your passion, right? Some guys are going to be perfectly okay with you yelling in their face because that's who they are. They're going to go right back at you. There are other guys where you got to take them to the side, you got to sit down with them, and you got to say, hey, this is how we're going to be playing football here. But that's where you do as a quarterback, especially the starting quarterback. You just get to know your team, you get to know your guys, you get to know what they react to, how you need to talk to them, how you deal with them. That's what's going to make Bryce Underwood such a great leader, especially when it's time for him to leave Michigan and go pro, which I believe he will. But this is just part of the growing pains. And Missouri coming out on top this past week and being able to sneak into the top 25. I'll be interested to see what they do the rest of the season. But yes, this is my top 25 going into week 3.
Fair enough, Arthur. I'll now pass the baton to you, Tim. Your top 25 as we pull it up here.
Yeah, so of course, just like you guys, top 3, Ohio State, Penn State, LSU. It really, can't change that right now. I got Oregon leapfrogging. I currently have them at 5, so now I have them at 4. Then I got Georgia coming back 1 spot as well, so the 2 of them just flipped. And then, of course, Miami, I still have at 6. Yes, I know they absolutely blew them out. But, I don't know. Maybe you could say SEC bias, why I have Georgia ahead of Miami. But I still think Kirby Smart will get his team going, which is why I have them at 5. Otherwise, then I got Texas at 7. I kept them exactly the same spot as I had them last week. Then this is where things changed for me. I had Notre Dame originally at 8, drop all the way down to 10. And I don't mean that in the sense that, they're a bad program. They obviously didn't play last week. But I did like what I saw from Illinois. And I really liked what I saw from Oklahoma, which is why, I did, you could say, punish. And I think it's too strong of a word. But I did have the bye week for Notre Dame kind of affect this ranking right here to go from 8 to 10 and have Illinois and Oklahoma leapfrog. But again, I still like the Fighting Irish. I was just more impressed with Oklahoma's upset. I don't want to say upset, but their defeat. The fact that they beat Michigan. I was trying to figure out how to phrase that. And then moving on to the latter half. So 11, I have South Carolina. And listen, I like Lenore Sellers. I like Shane Beamer. But again, I just want to err on the side of, okay, let's see how this goes, because Lenore Sellers has had an injury past, but I still think they're a very good team. Iowa State, I had them jump all the way up from 20 to 12, especially after their start, to the season. I really like, the Cyclones and kind of what they're putting together. Florida State, I had them go up a spot. Of course, winning 74 points is insane. Utah, I'm really high on. I think just that their, big time win against UCLA to start the year was really an eye opener, and then their just destruction of Cal Poly, last week. So I got them at 14. Clemson, I think I have Clemson at 15 because of the name, and yeah, you could say don't overreact. They still got the win over Troy, but it was definitely not a convincing win. And a part of me doesn't want to overreact, but at the same time, I'm looking at Clemson, and everyone wants to talk about Cade Klubnik, but I really haven't seen the Cade Klubnik everybody talks about on the field. Everyone wants to say Cade Klubnik's this guy, and it's like, okay, but you're not putting up the points you need to, especially against the teams that you should be. So I got Clemson at 15. I could drop them even lower, but that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. Otherwise, Tennessee, of course, their destruction over Eastern Tennessee. I can't. They took care of business. Like I said about the Gators or any team that you go up against an unranked, unnamed opponent, you got to take care of business. That means, if you're in the top 25, you got to win by 40 or more points, in my opinion. So, Ole Miss, A&M, Bama, Auburn, kind of all in that frame. Of course, Ole Miss, victory against Kentucky. A&M coming off a good win as well. Bama finally getting back. I'm really slow right now on Alabama. I have them at 23 last week after their loss to Florida State. And yes, they did annihilate Louisiana Monroe, but again, it's one of these feel out processes right now for me where I'm looking at Alabama and I'm like, listen, you got plenty of talented players. You obviously showed how much more talented you are than Louisiana Monroe. But again, that loss to Florida State means something. And I don't want to take that lightly. And then I got Auburn jumping up 4 spots into the top 20. And then as for the final 5, again, we all talked about what Missouri did against Kansas. I think they did very well with that. And yes, I still have SMU in the top 25, even though, of course, they did lose at home to Baylor. But Indiana, Michigan, of course, we just discussed the Michigan game. And with Indiana, again, they are 2-0. I like to focus on, the wins. And now, actually, as of last night, they're 3-0 and won 73-0 over Indiana State. I like to look at, I like to err on the side of, hey, are you undefeated? How many times have we seen teams that are undefeated, but they're outside of the top 10, and a majority of the teams in the top 10 have at least one loss. So Indiana off to a 3-0 start. Michigan, we discussed. Michigan still has a ways to go. Bryce Underwood is a hell of a talent, but it's going to be interesting to see how they rebound against or after their loss against Oklahoma. And then USF. I mean, it pained me. It killed me. I hated doing it, but I couldn't. I had to, if I wanted to be fair, which, again, as you guys know, I'm a very fair guy, and I had to put USF in there. So I think I did the bare minimum and put them at 25, but I'll accept that.